how did you prepare yourself to go to Cuba? Were you concerned or worried about safety issues in going to this country which has been blocked to us for so long?
No, I think I was more curious than anything else. I did some reading, and what I think was most illuminating about this was the degree to which I was able to realize how many prejudices we have about Cuba, and perhaps probably the rest of the world if I think about it. I've been living since the Cuban Missile Crisis with this image of a kind of police state environment in which everybody was a communist and that they hated the United States and one thing and another. Actually, I found that the people were very, very generous. They were impoverished, but by the same token, I think, had really created a very healthy society, very committed to education, very committed to culture. It was a very illuminating 10 days. I think there was a generational difference between the people that were, say, over 50 or 60 and the people that were younger, in that the younger people really were quite negative about the government, about the state of society, and were very much looking forward to a healthier and more productive relationship with the United States.
Now, were you there in a business capacity or as a tourist?
I went as a tourist with a company called Rhodes Scholar, which is the new name for Elder Hostel, but it's specifically set up as an educational tour. And they arranged a number of lectures, a number of people-to-people interactions. We had an opportunity to hear one of the most extraordinary choirs that I think I've ever heard, which is a full-time occupation in Cuba. We also went to schools where people were being trained as artists, and we also had lectures from a number of university professors on subjects of politics, gender relationships, and the history and architecture of Cuba. It was quite an educational week.
Now, you have a lot of experience in working in Latin America and Central America. Do you see in the future that Cuba will be a great place for business?
I don't know. The general sentiment there was that they wanted a much more productive relationship with the United States, but they also didn't want to sell the company or sell the country to developers and tour operators. So there's a bit of a ambivalence around the exact shape of the future from a commercial point of view. I think what's more important to them, and I think it's more likely from our point of view, is to see a lot more entrepreneurial activity on the Cuban side and see them taking more and more responsibility for building businesses from within Cuba as distinct from becoming a franchise for various U.S. interests.
But your insights could be helpful to the Cuban people. So is that something that you're thinking about, bringing what you know there?
I think so. I'm not quite sure, but I think that they have had an experience for 57 years in terms of how to have a healthy, educated, positive mood in their society, even in very desperate financial and economic situations. In that sense, they have something to offer, I think, a lot of the world, because I think a lot of the world is really facing those same kinds of challenges in terms of how do you make life happen when you don't have the financial resources or the economic base that much of the Western world enjoys.
So what about things like the internet and general other infrastructure that you were able to observe? How was that there?
I'm told that about 30 or 40% of the society do have smartphones. Internet is available pretty much anywhere, but limited to hotel lobbies and specific hotspots throughout the city. So you could drive through the city and see maybe 1,000 people in the park, all logged on doing various emails with friends and relatives in other countries. But it was not nearly as accessible as what we enjoy, and you do have to buy a specific number of minutes to be able to access it at all. The internet is still government owned, even though it's available to everyone.
You know, in our country, we have, as you know, a big argument about socialism versus democracy without getting into a political discussion. were there any aspects of their existing society that are worth retaining? I think of some of their health benefits and some of their approaches to health might still have value.
Well, I think that they are hoping to find some balance between the socialist values in terms of caring for the whole population and the economic opportunities that the West can afford. I believe that they are looking for a model that's something closer to Canada than it is to be like us. They repeatedly indicated that they were very excited about opportunities to participate in the capitalistic world. By the same token, they also were very clear that they wanted to retain some of their values in terms of the population's well-being, the commitment to education, the commitment to health care, their commitment to culture, and their commitment to I would say their growing commitment to the environment.
Now, there are lots of popular Hollywood movies that show Havana in its heyday, What's entertainment there like now? Did you have any great, besides the choir, any great nighttime entertainment, or is it still a very quiet, somber place?
Well, no, I would say everywhere we went, from lunchtime to bedtime, we were constantly bombarded with various kinds of music. One evening, we had a chance to see the Buena Vista Social Club, which recordings we've already been enjoying. But these were older musicians that were really going full out, really making the music, including one 100-year-old diva that was still belting them out across the space that the venue that it was located in.
I want to make sure I heard you. Did you say a 100-year-old diva?
That's exactly right.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
She was extraordinary. And
So,
the architecture in the general city is definitely run down. I mean, there's no question that many of the neighborhoods are worn or tired or not maintained. And there's a huge amount of work to be done in terms of bringing the city back to visual health. On the other hand, it's still very quaint. It's very interesting. The old part of Havana in particular, you could kind of feel a little bit of the old spirit. I was quite surprised in a way at the richness of Cuban's history, going back to when Christopher Columbus discovered it in the beginning, and the various eras that it's gone through with the Spanish, the British, and the United States, and now re-entering the world newly in the 21st century.
So last question on the subject of Cuba. Would you go back as a vacationer? Is it ready yet for true vacationers, or is it still just kind of a visit into history?
I don't know if it's ready for vacation yet. Certainly I didn't see it all, and I understand there are other parts of Cuba that are more beach-oriented. We didn't really spend any time on the beach at all. We did see the Bay of Pigs and had an opportunity to hear their side of that story, which is a bit exaggerated from my knowledge of history, but at the same time, it was interesting. We got to see a city called Cienfuegos and another colonial town called Trinidad. But given that cross-section, I think that it's interesting more than a place where I would want to go necessarily to vacation. I wouldn't mind going back to get a little bit more education.
Well, thank you for this insight, because, as we discuss possible futures, it's not just the future of the U.S., it's obviously the future of the globe. So a perspective on Cuba is a nice addition to this look at possible futures.
Well, it is. And aside from the political tensions with the government and what I would say the failures of the revolution, Cuba, I think, does have something specific and interesting to offer the world. And it has a lot to do with their capacity for survival, their capacity to be innovative. They're extremely creative people and very energized. So I think that they're not defeated at all, and that can be a very inspirational environment for a lot of us.
Thanks, Jim.